curiosity. She has living, and with a deep-rooted love for nature instilled since childhood, April shares traditional herbal knowledge and fosters community through her presentations and teachings, and draws from her extensive training with renowned herbalists like Rosemary, Gladstar, and Kate Gilday. And she leads in-person groups and individual consultations. And April's also here to kick off Friend a Tree Week, which I organized a few years ago to encourage everyone to send your spirit's intentions and your own personal intentions through the trees, and from the trees then throughout the universe. And so she's here to help us learn more about trees and herbs and connecting with nature. And you can connect with her on social media at April at Blooming Curiosity, and her website is down below too, bloomingcuriosity.com. And thank you so much, April, for talking with me again today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so great.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anytime you want to talk about herbs, you give me a call.
That's like every day. It's like, come on, let's go talk about plants.
Oh, I hear you, especially when it's been, I don't know about where you live, but I live in Kansas, and it's been, where we live anyway, it's been a very brutal winter in many ways, much colder than a lot of winters. And tonight, in fact, we're supposed to get 60 miles an hour wind and a blizzard that lasts just for a few hours, and then it's 40 degrees tomorrow, so the snow will melt, but 60 miles an hour wind.
Yeah, we had that too, and it was pretty brutal when it was so windy. It was actually kind of scary. But I always thank the wind when it's there, because it helps to move the energy out. Obviously, we need a lot of energy moving lately.
Well, that's a good thing to say. Yeah, that's a very good way to look at it. I was just more concerned. We have a greenhouse, and I was just concerned what it's going to do to all the plastic, if everything's going to stay intact.
Right. But, well, it should be okay. It should be okay. How many years have you had your plastic
on? 2. This is, we just put it up. It'll be 2 years this spring, and it's a 10-year plastic. It's a real thicker greenhouse plastic than a lot of stuff you buy. It's almost like a woven fabric.
Oh, wow,
and
great.
I think it's 10 mil is
and
the
is it double insulated?
Well, it isn't now. That was our original plan, but what we've done so far, it just has the one layer on it, and then when it drops below 25 at night, we put a second layer over the plants.
Okay. Well, it depends. If you're growing cold weather plants, it doesn't matter. Like they can freeze. Like, so if you do like broccoli or kale, or I find arugula doesn't always do so well with, like the colder weather, but it definitely can withstand, as long as it's not in the Arctic blast under the door.
There you go. Well, our spinach has done very, very well. The leaves aren't as big as if you were growing outdoors, but they're very healthy and very yummy and good. Our kale hasn't done as well. It just it's alive. It hasn't died, but it just isn't flourishing like the spinach does. But that's okay.
And even most lettuces can withstand cold. And the trick is if it freezes, just cut it when it defrosts, so that it doesn't melt. But it can freeze perfectly fine and still grow. It just grows a lot slower. But I find that it's much more green and dense, like when you grow it through the winter, and it's sweeter.
Nice. That would be good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very, very nice. So I guess I had a question to start things off with. What's your favorite medicinal tree? And or you can have your pick here, or you can do both. Do you have a favorite story that you like to tell about a certain tree?
Well, my favorite medicinal tree, although I don't use it medicinally a lot of the times, is the tulip poplar. And it's a really cool tree. They almost look like teacups when they bloom. It takes them 30 years to bloom.
Whoa.
Yeah, and they're a rarer tree, but it's the most beautiful tree and flower you will ever see. It has like these fluorescent orange spots in them that you don't typically see in nature. And I don't know if it's everywhere, but I've made glycerates and everything out of it, but I don't know, that the energy seems to want to be around me, but not necessarily in me. So I don't typically use it, as a medicinal inside, but there's something about that tree that really speaks to me. And I don't know what it is, but I find them all over the place. Once you see, once you see one, when it's blooming, you see them everywhere. And it's just, I don't know, it just reminds me of like a fairy tale, the tree. And when I sit with it, it's just, I don't know, it's like it brings out the playful child inside of me. It's like the little fairy that wants to go play, or the build the fairy house, or do it definitely inspires childlike playfulness for me.
Aw,
And I think,
that's great.
it helps me to take life a lot less seriously, which is a lot of the times what I need to do. And I think a lot of us need to do, is like,
I
let's just
do.
relax a little bit. Yeah. I should send you some glycerin. Even if you just have it around you. But yeah, I really love the tulip poplar. If you ever get a chance, or you're able to look it up, it's definitely a really good tree. And it grows here. It's, but a lot of people don't grow it just because I don't know, they get annoyed at the flowers. I don't know why. Because they drop.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Some people are very concerned about their yards and stuff. Yeah.
But it's like you're picking up, the landscapers come in every week anyway. What's the difference,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like them. And I love magnolias, because magnolias
Yeah.
are an ancient tree. And it's usually the first one that you see blooming, and so it's, I don't know. And I like the fact that they come in all different colors, so it's like, it's like it's the Aries in the world, the first, that inspiration to spring, the first quickening of, I mean, usually it's snowdrops and, crocuses, but definitely the first tree to bloom is
Oh,
the magnolia.
oh, yeah. Very
And,
nice.
yeah. They're such a delicate flower,
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the first time I saw a magnolia. It was actually on top of a cake. And I was like, what are these beautiful blooms? Like, and to find out that not all of magnolias are edible, but that particular one was. Usually it's the purple one. I forget what the Latin name is, but that one's more likely to be edible than other ones. But it was the most beautiful topping to a cake that I had ever seen, and it was my first introduction to eating flowers. I was like, ooh, I love this.
Well, really? So what's your favorite flower to eat then? Or maybe magnolia is.
I like magnolia, but violet is definitely my favorite. So I eat a lot of violets, and I take when my kids were little, now they're teenagers, so they don't want to forage with me as much. But violets were definitely, come on, let's go eat some violets, Yeah. Yep. Violets. I like purple, and so it's just, and not only that, but it's fascinating to me that the leaves are hearts, and then it's like you can eat this beautiful, like, blossom that's not even like any other blossom that you ever see, because it's got like the two petals and then the one, so it's an odd shaped, one. It's not typical like rose, or, I mean, just think about all your fruit trees. All your fruit trees are in the rose family.
Right.
So it's like, and I think about that all the time. Every time I eat a fruit, I'm like, this is in the rose family. Like, how aromatic is the fruit that we eat? How, like, how beautiful and luscious and sensual is that? It's like, and that's all part of the rose family.
Wow.
It's like, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. So with the violet, have you made like essences with it, or tinctures with the violet as the flower, or what part do you use?
Typically I use the flower, and I try to find the purple ones. Sometimes they're harder to find. We have white ones here that have a little bit of purple, but the ones that are fully purple is the ones that I typically try to use. And then when the kids were little, we used to do like a science experiment with them. So we would boil the water and make like a tea out of it. And then we would add lemon juice to it and then watch it turn red.
Oh,
It's
okay.
actually a way you can test your pH of your soil is through violet leaves or violet flowers. Yeah,
Interesting.
so you can actually put your soil in there and you can see what color it turns. Does it stay the same color or does it turn another color? Because it's almost like a liquid litmus paper.
Huh. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
I would have thought. Well, I've kind of gotten into flower essences a little bit as far as just kind of exploring and making some from my own yard. The
Uh-huh.
last year, it was fun to collect the essences from each flower, and so I'm going to do more so because I thought I just did like 3 or 4, and then I thought, wait, how many do I have around my yard? And yeah, I had like 20 if medicinal weeds and
Yeah.
like you said, violets and all sorts, as well as the flowers I planted and stuff. I thought, whoa, this is awesome.
Yeah, it's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
I have a dwarf peach tree just outside of my door, and a couple of years ago, I made an essence out of that one. And the kids are like, "What are you doing, mom?" And I'm like, just sitting by the tree, and I'm like, I have my journal out, and I'm like, and it was funny because I said I wanted to thank you for spending time with me, and because typically how I make flower essences is I sit with whatever plant I'm with, and then I just kind of give them my whole attention. I never ask them for anything. I'm always like, what can I do for you? How can I better serve you? Because like when we make friends with people, we don't go up to them and be like, oh, what can I take from you? We're like, hi, my name's April. Like, what do you do for a living? What's your interests? You get to know somebody before you kind of like, get all their information. And I find that the more often I sit with a plant or a tree, that the more information I get.
Mhm.
Because it's like we're building that relationship. So it's like, in the beginning, it's like, oh, well, I'm soft and I'm beautiful, it's like, and it's like, oh, okay, and then you sit with it again and it's like, oh, and, like I'm really good for nerves and, like, and I'm like, oh, wow, I never really thought about a tree good for nerves, like, you don't really think about that, you think
Right.
about a tree as like stoic and like grounded and,
Mhm.
but it's like to be able to get to know the nuances of the plant as well is also very nice.
It
Yeah.
is. It
Mhm.
is. Yeah.
And not only that, but now every time I pass the dwarf, peach, I'm like, "Hi, how are you today? How are your buds doing? Oh, I can see that this, branch isn't doing so well. Do you mind if I cut it off?" So it's like, you care for it, and be like, "Oh, no, like I've been wanting that one off. It's, please take it off."
Very cool.
Yeah. I was at
Oh,
a I was at an herb conference once and there was a tulip poplar there and I'm walking like to the dorm, like to the place where I was staying and there was the tulip poplar and she's like, "Can you please just turn off that light? Just turn off that light." Because there was like a spotlight right there and I was like,
oh,
"I can't." I said, "I don't have that ability." I was like, "And besides," I said, "if, we turn the spotlight off, it would be too dark and, things could happen." And she's like, "That light is so annoying. Can you just turn it off? I need to get
oh,
some rest."
yeah.
And it's like now when I drive down the road and I see all the trees by the power lines and stuff like that and how
Oh,
they
yeah.
all have knots and gnarls and like so I think about that energy going through the trees, going through everything. It's like, oh, like just like the light, it's annoying to them. It's not, like the place that they want to be, but people like us think we know what we're doing. And we're like, oh, let's, plant this plant by the power lines. But then I also think, was the power lines there first or was the tree there first?
Hmm.
Because some of the trees by me are pretty big around, probably like, I probably couldn't reach my hands around them. They have
Right.
a lot longer lifespan, so it's like, what came first, the electricity or the tree?
Well, what you can do though to um, s- help both live
Right.
together, right, in the situation, you can place dowsing rods because what I had learned, I might not remember all the details, but especially from the poles where the transformers are on,
Mhm,
then it's like 10 miles. It distorts the energy for like 10 miles. But if you place the copper cure rods,
mhm,
a certain colored um, tipped one that you uh, kind of program with your own with those intentions for that use, right?
mhm,
Then and you place that. near the tree or in the line of the tree, then it restores the good, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's what I've heard, and I've always wanted to do that. Like, coming into our little town, there's a transformer there with all the poles, and I went out and doused it, a few years ago to find out, oh yeah, that's where it's all coming from and stuff like that. But I've never got back to place the cure, and it would help everything. I should do that this
Yeah.
spring.
Because
And
it's like, well, and two, like the power company comes and then they just like cut the branches because they're on the lines, and it's like they don't even think about the tree and how this affects the tree. So a lot of the trees, like, they have like a hole in the middle, like
yeah,
it's just the
yeah,
weirdest thing. I'm like, I
it
don't
is.
remember trees being like that when I was a kid, and then to see all like the little pieces coming off because it's like you're not living in harmony together. Like there has to be like just plant the tree in more or out more so that way the power lines and the trees don't have to cross so much, like right in the middle of the tree. It's like, they just have one on each side and not anything in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, when you start getting into like energy and frequency and stuff like that, you kind of see it all around. You can see its
Oh.
power in a lot of things. It's like where I am, where I live, that luckily enough, all of our power lines are underground. But not everybody is that way. It's like,
Mhm.
I don't understand why they don't just put the power lines underground.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I guess, yeah, some places are and some aren't. I have no
Yeah.
idea why. Yeah,
Right.
I have no idea why.
And two, I would also think that it would insulate it from that, like, the electromagnetic field if it was
Mhm.
underground more than above the ground. Because
Yeah.
now you have a lot of the Earth's energy, you know, negating what's coming out of those power lines.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I think it would be good. Yeah, I have no idea. Maybe it depends on the each county or something and funding to do it.
Yeah. Well, they
I
just
have
replaced all
no
of our
idea.
telephone poles and put bigger ones. So it's like,
Hmm.
I mean, that must cost a lot of money. So I would think that putting them in the ground would have probably been a lot better over time, like as far as like cost effectiveness over time.
Yeah, yeah, I
You
would think
know,
so too.
I mean,
So I was wondering,
mhm.
this in March, we have a lunar eclipse on the full moon, a solar eclipse on the new moon,
And a
and
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th, and the equinox,
Hmm.
right? And the astrological energy on the 30th, is it?
Hmm.
That's supposedly supposed to be something in alignment, or that no one alive at this time has experienced, right?
Yeah.
And so, do you know folklore or magic of medicine, plants that would be equinox related or full moon or new moon related?
Well, definitely violets are a medicine of the moon. So you would,
Oh, okay.
you could potentize that. Well, I don't have violets now. We don't have, I mean, I don't know if you do well, no, because you're pretty cold too.
Not
But
yet.
violets
Yeah.
definitely, are moon energy. Anything that's, you can even do marshmallow root because
Okay.
marshmallow root is also a plant of the moon. But you could, make an essence of that, or well, you could, I guess you couldn't make an essence of that, but you can make a tincture or something of that. And it's
Mhm.
it's now becoming much more popular. It's a thing called spagyrics. Are you familiar
Yes.
with that term?
Uh-huh.
So it's a method which takes alchemy and herbalism and kind of blends them together and into a spagyric tincture. So now you're not only and not only that, but they also take that mark, so the plant material you would usually throw away, and then they put it in a clay pot and then they burn it. So that way that goes down to its salts, and then they
Mm,
add that back to the tincture or whatever. So it now the plant has all of its elements back, so it makes a more
mm,
potent tincture or whatever it is that you're making.
interesting.
And then they do it based on the moon, which is then based on what elements, like Watery plants are typically for the moon. So depending on what you want to do with it, you would do it either on the new or the full, depending on what energy you wanted to bring to that medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really kind of an interesting thing, but they actually even use stills. So they don't like just put the herb in the alcohol like we do as herbalists. They
Oh.
actually distill it during that time. So that way,
Hmm.
or sometimes they'll even take, I think they also take into account like not only the moon, but what moon it's in, and
Mm-hmm.
like, and also bringing that energy forward.
Right. Right.
So it's really kind of interesting. There's a guy named Culpepper is his last name, and he wrote a book, and he's one of the herb, like he's an earlier herbalist, but he actually does correspondences with the plants and astrology. So which ones are like, which ones go with which? Like nettles is Aries because it's, got those spiky, stingers. And so it's like
Mm-hmm.
that initiating, and because it comes up in the beginning of spring, it's that initiating energy. So it's correlated with an Aries. Um, with the Aries. So it's really kind of an interesting study, another layer. Like that's what I love about herbalism is like there's always the next layer. It's like an onion. It's like, oh, so now we know the plants. Oh, now we know, and it's like it just keeps kind of expanding. So it's like, oh, there's another layer, astrology. And it's like, why is the correlation with nettle and Aries, or why is the correlation between, violet and the moon? So it's
Right. It's so it just goes to show what a complex and um, interesting and vital or full of vitality nature and universe we live in. Right.
right. It's
It's
like
beautiful.
this Rubik's cube that it's like there's so many different combinations that you could, like put together. And it's like, it's nice to know the different combinations because sometimes you need it. Who doesn't need a little extra help every once in a while?
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
you know.
Well,
And
very interesting.
David Dalton has a whole line of flower essences, but they're all based on the moon. So it's like he calls them the moon essences. And they're all different plants that he made under the moonlight in, flower essences. And each one comes like when you order the set, each one comes with a tone that goes with it to activate the essence.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Isn't that
Huh.
pretty cool? And I was like, huh, that makes sense because how do you see in the dark? Right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, oh, the tone will show you the way. And
Yeah.
it just made sense to me. I was like, oh, now that makes complete sense.
Wow.
Right?
That's beautiful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Very beautiful. Awesome. There's just no end of information on plants.
Oh, there really isn't.
So-
And that's the thing that's the best. For
Well,
me anyway.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No matter how long you live, there's so
You'll
much to be interested in and to
exactly.
explore.
And the different layers. It's just, it's like endless, which is for me is good because sometimes I can have a tendency to get bored. So it's like, oh,
Mhm.
well, what about this layer? And it's like, ooh, let's go down that rabbit hole for a little while. And it's like, I'm done with that rabbit hole. Oh, what other rabbit hole can I jump in?
Right, right. Uh,
And then how it's all interconnected. It's like once you start, exploring plants and learning about plants, there's like so many other weavings that go in there that it's just like, oh wow, I never thought about putting this with that, or like even like acupuncture, they use moxa. What is moxa? It's mugwort. So when you
oh,
do
hmm,
moxibustion in traditional, like in acupuncture, that's what it is. It's a form of mugwort.
hmm,
And that helps to clear meridians. So it's like, oh, and it grows everywhere. So,
yeah.
it's like utilize that instead of using, like white sage, utilize the mugwort that's growing everywhere. It's very aromatic. It's
Mhm.
very, clearing. It connects the heavens and the earth, so it's like, and it also stitches the womb of the earth back together. That's why, wherever there's somebody breaking ground, that's why it grows there.
Neat. I bet I haven't looked from I'm writing that down. I haven't looked for that in my yard. It's one I haven't been real familiar with, so I'll have to.
Yeah, it's Artemisia vulgaris. It's
Okay.
mugwort. And then there's also other mugworts too, like lovage is in the Artemisia family, and wormwood is another one that's in that
Right.
Artemisia family. But
I
it still has that
recognize that
same
one.
it still has the same clearing ability.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. So, is what was I gonna say? I remember when we spoke last fall, and like one of my favorite trees is cottonwood, and we went into different things about the cottonwood. But what I was going to ask you to clarify,
Oh, after those 60-mile-an-hour winds, you should go out and see if any of your cottonwood
yes,
trees fell down and get those buds
the
and put them in
buds,
oil.
yes. So that's what I was wondering. I was just verifying that it was springtime. It was the buds that you
Yeah,
got,
you
right?
want the
Yeah.
buds just before they open because they're sticky and resinous, and you want to stick that in the oil, and it's really great for skin and healing.
Very
Yeah,
good. I will do that tomorrow.
yeah. Be like, see, there is some benefits to 60-mile-an-hour winds.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah,
Oh, shoot.
I like it when you don't have to cut any trees down; that it's already there for you.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, I don't, I typically when I do any bark medicine or tree medicine and it has to do with the bark or whatever, I typically wait for either pieces of it to fall down itself or I take like little branches and then utilize that bark inside. So that way you don't have to do any harm to the tree. A lot of people like they used to, I don't know if they still do, but a lot of people that weren't as aware would girdle the tree, which is they take the
Oh,
whole
yeah.
bark from around the whole outside, and then that kills the tree because that's where all of the life force goes up and down the tree.
Right. Right.
So when you're collecting bark, being mindful, especially cherry, cherry bark is uh, they typically girdle the tree for the cherry bark, but then it's not there next year. So just being
Right.
aware of how you
Good.
get these plants, and what you do when you harvest them. And, also if somebody else has been there, just leave it alone and find the next cherry tree.
Right. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we want these medicines here for generations to come, and not only that, but just for the ecosystem and how everything works together. And, there's a reason it's there and it's a cycle. Sometimes it's not there. Sometimes it is, so it's like,
Yeah.
just being mindful of those things. Cherry trees don't usually last as long as, say, an oak or you know, or even a poplar.
Mhm.
They don't last
Right.
as long. So, being
Yeah.
mindful of those things too.
Yeah. I even feel kind of bad once in a while if, say, like I dug my marshmallow roots for the first time. I'd let them grow to try to have more roots, right?
Yeah.
But last fall, I was going to use them for a tea or a tincture that I was needing. And so, but I was careful to only dig a certain portion of them, so I
Or
left
there's lots of
the rest.
crowns, like so you have lots of crowns in that marshmallow root. So just
Oh,
carefully take what you need and then replant those crowns somewhere else wherever you want them.
no, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, I used to feel bad about harvesting roots too because of that. I'm like but then I was like, "Wait, my elecampane, my marshmallow, my valerian, they all have, those crowns, so it's like, just plant them back."
Well, I'm kind of scared to dig up my comfrey.
Yes,
It's
yes.
like, oh, I do it very hesitantly, not to save the plant because it's so
You just don't want
prolific,
it to
but
spread.
I don't want it to spread. And but this year, yeah, I wasn't on top of things with the comfrey since we moved, and it was like so birds carried it because I
Yeah,
wanted the flowers because they're so pretty. I
they
really
are.
like them, and the butterflies come from for them and everything. But then the birds drop the seeds
Seeds.
all over the garden, and so then I have comfrey growing where I don't want it, and then
But
oh,
then you
it's
harvest those and just,
I
like, make
do,
sure you do
I
an
do,
extra big circle around and,
yeah,
and as you're going through, harvesting those roots, just make sure you don't have any rootlets in there, so that way when you put the dirt
that's
back,
right.
there's not more
I know.
comfrey coming.
I know. Exactly.
Either that or disperse that around your fruit trees, so that way you can build a barrier for, rodents not to get through.
Oh, well, that's true. Let your comfrey grow around the base of your fruit trees.
About
Or
3 feet away. Because
oh,
what
I
it
didn't
does
know
is it
that. Okay.
creates like this barrier. So when moles and voles and
Mhm.
go try to go in there, now they're hit with the barrier of the comfrey, which is much more dense. They'll eat those roots, and you don't really care because they got a million roots.
Yeah, yeah.
And not only that, but then it also adds wild fodder to your
Mhm.
to your fruit trees. So it's adding more nutrients to your
Well, and
fruit
then it
trees.
would bring butterflies there, right?
Right, exactly.
Right where
Yep,
they're needed. Oh, that's good. I have tons and tons of comfrey. I get
yep.
planted around all our fruit trees.
Yes, you could. And then just mow it. Just mow it like you would the lawn.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
You know?
Thank you for that. That's what I
Yeah.
was gonna do this year. Yeah, I was gonna tell my husband to please just, save me a little patch so I can see the flowers, but mow
Right.
everything else, right?
Right, exactly. So, if you have like if it's towards the woods or something, just let all those flowers go and then mow the
Mhm.
rest down. Because that'll,
Yeah.
that adds a lot of good, compost to your fruit trees. And not only that,
Right.
but
Yeah.
protection too, and nutrients, because
Mhm.
comfrey has a pretty high protein content.
Right. Oh, it's very good. I've
Yeah.
used, the roots and the leaves for many things, and the tea is good.
Yeah, it
I
is.
like
It's
it,
really
yeah.
good. Yeah.
There was one lady I gave some to a few years ago. She was 90 or 95 and had broken her arm.
Oh wow.
And so I gave her salve that I used that had a large percentage of comfrey root in it, to rub on the top. And then I gave her comfrey to drink as a tea.
Uh-huh.
And it was like, I expected at 95 years old that it would take 3 months to heal. It took 3 weeks to
Oh
heal
yeah.
her arm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
It's known
amazing.
as nip bone, like
Yes.
that's yeah, so it's kind of an interesting thing. But yeah, and not only that, but it also helps to soften those things that have gotten hard. So, you know, it helps to keep your heart soft. It helps to keep your lungs soft.
Mm,
Like it helps to keep other things soft. It's really kind of interesting because it's like hardening your bone, but then it's
yeah.
like softening all the other, all the other soft tissue. So it's
I,
really kind of an interesting plant.
I didn't know that. That's very
Yeah.
interesting. And is it anti-inflammatory also?
Oh, well, I think it is, but it's not like used as an anti-inflammatory per
Mhm,
se, but yeah, it definitely is because it promotes healing. It's a cell proliferator, so it helps to the cells to divide and create more new cells. So it's like I think in that way, what it does, how it quells the inflammation, is that those cells you're getting new cells, so the ones that are
mhm.
inflamed can now kind of perish, and the new ones can take over.
Okay. Because what came to my mind, I'd been reading more. I'm in my 60s, and so um, I've been through menopause quite a long time ago, but it's like, my hips hurt or they're just inflamed and get much more easily out of place.
Right. Well,
And
it
so,
also coats and soothes, because it has
yeah.
that mucilaginous quality, so it helps to coat and soothe, and
And then I thought, well, as people age, then risk of breaking their hip or falling and breaking their hip or something, or often the hip breaks in place and then they fall is
right.
what they find. And so I thought, wow, comfrey salve of some kind would be ideal for aging women.
Oh yes,
you
aging
know, it's,
anybody. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And two, we also have a tendency to dry out as we get older. Also depending on our climate. Hence, but
Mhm.
comfrey definitely helps to moisten that, moisten all that up. So it's, it
That's really
makes
good to know. Yeah,
yeah,
very,
because
very good to
like you get up and it's like pop, poop, your
know.
knees like crack, you're like, "Wait, how did this happen?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. The comfrey helps with that. Comfrey definitely helps to like coat and
Mm,
soothe. And so does marshmallow. But I think
yeah.
comfrey is more for, I don't know, I feel like comfrey is much more for the internal organs and the inner workings of things than marshmallow. Like marshmallow, it coats and soothes, I feel like more the outside, where comfrey
Mm,
kind of goes deeper into the structures.
okay.
Mhm.
Oh, very good. So I was wondering here, we've talked about some of the things, but just for people that don't know, as well as to refresh mine, what's the difference between tea and infusion? And then there's elixirs and
Decoction.
decoctions. And let's see, I wrote another word down I can't read right now. Oh, um, tinctures, of course, too. But then I had learned recently about herb baths, and I thought, well,
Oh, I
that's
love
just
that.
putting the herbs in your bath water, but it's not. Then I read the instructions, and it's like you boil the herbs or steep them like you
Mhm.
would a strong tea, and then after you bathe, then you rub the herb water on
You
you
can do
all
that
over.
too. I do
Okay.
both. Yeah, I've
Okay.
done both. I typically like, well, especially when, my kids are sick or I'm sick, I definitely
Mhm.
just stick that big, like strong medicinal tea
Mhm.
or decoction, like depending on what you're doing. So typically you decoct roots. So something that a decoction is just a longer boil because it's,
Okay.
the harder stuff. So it's berries, barks, and roots. So those things you have to cook longer. So that's why that's called a decoction. An
Okay.
infusion is just boiling water and then pouring it over the herbs. And those are typically flowers and leaves, like the softer structures, the ones that you don't necessarily have to boil to death in order to get their medicinal qualities out. So
Mhm.
that's the difference between them. And elixir, um, I find it's having many different meanings nowadays, as far as an elixir concerned, but it's typically like a sweet with an alcohol mixture. It could be honey, it can be
Oh,
glycerin, it could be, so typically that's been the definition lately. I don't know if I ever heard of an elixir um, talked about in the older books that I've read, but definitely the newer version of it is something that's mixed with sweet. So whether it's honey or maple syrup or and then alcohol based. So it's kind of like a mixture of
oh.
both.
Hmm.
You know, I wonder, yeah, I mean it sounds better. And I
Well,
wonder
it
if there's
does.
less restrictions in the word used, so it's kind of like interesting to see how, like language changes over time.
Yeah, it reminds me of the hot toddies we had to drink when
Yes, yeah,
whiskey and honey and
yeah,
lemon juice or something when I
yeah.
was a child.
I know. Ugh. You're like, oh, I don't like this.
When we had
And then with
bad
the
coughs and stuff, yeah.
yeah, and then with the herbal bath, you can do two ways. So you can, use that strong tea or decoction, and wipe it all over your body. But I also just throw it in the bath sometimes when you're too weak to even try to think about standing up for too long because
Mhm,
your body will absorb up to a quart of water when fully submerged, and especially when you're sick because you're not drinking as much typically, you're
mhm.
more likely to absorb that quart of water while you're fully submerged in water.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
And-
good to know.
yeah, and then a tincture is an alcohol-based solution, so you're usually putting your herbs in alcohol, in specific ratios depending on the plant material and like all that good stuff and the way you do it because there's like the technical way and then there's like the traditional way,
Mhm,
which I don't, I understand standardization so that way you know specifically that you're getting that specific amount. I'm not knocking that at all, but the
mhm.
only difference between traditional and scientific, I guess I'll say, is the math.
Okay,
Yep.
mhm.
And I've never really noticed any difference between the traditional method versus the standardized method. But I understand it for, like purposes of selling to the general public and big companies and all that other stuff. So at least you're getting a specific amount of whatever that herb is,
Mhm. Okay.
you know.
Hey, I was wondering, do you have, I don't know, this thought just totally came to me. What projects do you have going on for your garden or for your herb business or things this year?
I definitely always seeds. Always, always seeds. Chamomile is always one of my very first favorites that I want to plant in the garden. And if I'm always hoping that it's there already,
Mhm.
but and chamomile is just it takes hours to pick, but
Yeah.
but at the same time, I don't mind picking it. Like when I first get there, I'm like usually all frazzled and whatever, like, oh, I got to pick this. I got to spend hours just doing this. And then I get there and I start picking. And then all of a sudden it's like, I don't know what happens. That chamomile, just the smell of it, the sweetness, just being there, looking at the different flowers and what stages they're in. I don't know. After a while, you're like, wait, I've been here for 3 hours. Like how did chamomile work its magic on me?
Yeah.
I really chamomile, of course. Marigolds. I'm definitely expanding this year. I want to. I'm going to be working with a friend of mine who has a community garden and doing stuff with her. So that'll be good. So the deer won't eat all of my plants this year.
Nice.
So I'll have a bigger space.
Nice. Yeah.
We definitely have a problem with deer eating everything because they just keep building houses and there's just not enough space for all the deer that are here. Yeah. So, and I don't really fence everything because I don't know. They live here too, but I do have to hide my comfrey every year from the deer.
Or the blackberries. I know when we lived in the country, we had a problem with them eating our blackberries.
Oh, they eat them down to the ground. I gave up on my berry garden. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, those go behind fences, but like it's not like crazy. We just use like a regular like deer fence, not like the plastic soft ones. So that way in the fall, we just take them down. So that way we can, rake and get the leaves out of there. And then we let them eat whatever's in there, but and take advantage of their poop and everything else. So that way it's fertilizing for the next year.
Right.
But, during the growing season, we're definitely, covering some stuff up, but there's some stuff they don't ever find. I don't know. Sometimes they get into a routine of where they kind of go. So they always eat my ginseng and my golden seal every single time. I really should get like a little fence under there. But it makes sense because if Lyme's disease is prevalent in them, just, as it is, then it just makes sense that they're trying to eat my ginseng and my golden seal because they're trying, and they actually eat my echinacea now. They never used to eat echinacea, and now they eat my echinacea.
Really?
Yep.
You think that's for healing too?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Definitely. Yeah. And too, like, even now, like they're even coming up and eating my hellebores, which they've never done before.
Yeah.
I didn't even think they ate them, but they're eating them this year. So it's kind of an interesting thing.
Interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I've expanded my garden too. Like I have bone set this year, which is nice, and I'm also starting to be more aware of, like here, I call it my shade garden because I only get 4 hours of sun total. At my house. So, like I'm like, oh, this is full sun, for here, but it's like you try to plant calendula here and they're all this little, you're like, what happened? Where's my calendula? And it's like, oh, I don't have full sun, so I stopped planting calendula here, but a lot of the other, marshmallow grows pretty good here, boneset actually grows really great here. So it, it's I also have wild quinine, which is
really? Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny because my neighbor brought it over. He's like, "Oh, you're an herbalist." He's like, "I figured you'd know what to do with this." He's like, "And if worse comes to worse," he goes, "if we all get malaria," he goes, "I know where to come." I was like, I guess I'm making a lot of tonic water. He's so funny. He's so funny. So I have wild quinine in my garden now too, but it's it's definitely fun. And then this year I also got a more pollinator mix just because I have bees and stuff here. So let's see. I want to see. I mean, I'm sure the deer are probably going to eat most of it down, but it would be interesting to see what doesn't get eaten down.
Sure.
So we'll see. And the deer don't typically like aromatic plants. So if there's marigolds and stuff like that in there, they probably won't eat them. So it'll be interesting to see what they do eat. And I mean, they'll definitely eat like, the cosmos and, like probably all that other stuff. But some of the other stuff they might not. But I really want to plant more trees, but I have lots of trees already. So,
yeah.
if my property was bigger, then, like, and we can push the trees out a little bit more further, it might be a little bit better.
Yeah, that's what I think. We cut down one big tree when we moved in 5 years ago to make room for the fruit trees,
Mhm.
so we'd have some place. But other than that, I sure hate to take any out, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of sunshine here, so
Yeah. What I
we're doing
typically
good.
do is, like, if I have to cut it, well, we did cut one tree down but it was dying. It's been dying for years, but we finally cut it down because it got so bad. It was a beech tree. And so, but then now at the base, because we never did the stump grinding, now at the base, all these little beech trees are coming out of there. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, like, you get one and now I have 10 more, like, I don't have to plant a tree and feel bad. But typically what I do is if I cut one or I remove one, then I usually plant another one somewhere else.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's I was wondering for springtime too, um, is there any spring allergies you can think of that would be easy for someone to, if they were wanting to help themselves if they had spring allergies or something?
Nettles is really great for allergies, believe it or not. And so is local honey, of course, because it has those
Mhm.
pollens in there that are typically, in your area. So it kind of gives you like a low dose. Like if you take a teaspoon a day, it helps with those, it helps give you a low dose. And typically you want to start like January, well, depending on where you are and where you live and when your spring starts. You usually want to start at least 3 to 6 months before allergies start. So that way your body has a buildup by the time spring does come and those allergies come. Typically, it's a lot of leaf mold that time of year, So if you're raking leaves and all of a sudden you find yourself sneezing a lot, it's typically because of that leaf molds that, yeah, that's causing it. Um, nettles definitely helps. I would tell everybody to just start drinking nettle tea because nettle helps with allergies and just kind of building up that body, getting those minerals back in balance. At first, when you start drinking it, it's going to be a diuretic, so you're going to pee a lot, but then that'll even out as your body gets more balanced. And so I would definitely recommend that. And know your beekeeper. Definitely know your beekeeper. It's like, what do you do? Like, how are you managing your hives? How are you managing the varroa mite? So, a lot of bees have what's called a varroa mite now, and it came over from overseas somewhere, and that's it has a lot of vectors. But it's like, how do they manage that? Are they managing it in a way that's more natural, or are they using chemicals and pesticides and herbicides? And granted, they're not supposed to be using them during the honey flow itself, but still there's beeswax in there that they're building up all year, so there's no say in how much trace pesticide is in that wax. And then the honey goes in there, and like anything else, it absorbs whatever is around it. So just being mindful of knowing your beekeeper, knowing their practices and those kinds of things. But those are like two staples that I would just, and then also, anything that'll clean out your liver. So dandelion, this is why like spring greens are really important, is because like it cleans out your body after a harsh winter of a lot of fats, a lot of stews, a lot of soups, a lot of comfort food. So it's like, you want those bitters to get that liver to kind of start, get a jump start. And by clearing out the liver, it'll also help too with those seasonal allergies, especially spring ones.
Yeah, and cleavers are one of my favorite
Oh,
for
yes.
the
Yep.
liver cleanse. Yeah.
And what I do in the spring is I make a cleavers, nettle, and dandelion vinegar.
Oh,
So I
okay.
put that all in a vinegar and just let it sit, for 4 weeks. And then I use that vinegar portion in my salads, like wherever I use vinegar. I just use it,
Okay.
like that. You
Do you
can
use
even take it as a shot if you wanted to, but
use
depending on apple
apple
cider,
cider? Uh-huh.
raw apple cider vinegar. You always
Mhm.
want to make sure
Right.
that you have that mother in there.
Right. Right.
Yeah, because and not only that, but fermented foods in itself will help with digestion and other things too.
Mhm.
So and assimilation. I also like another one I like is chickweed. I put chickweed
Mhm.
in there sometimes too because chickweed helps with the assimilation of all of our minerals, vitamins and minerals.
Okay.
Yeah, but chickweed is great, and I'm sure it's growing in your hoop house right now.
I'm sure it is.
Sometimes the year just takes over. I'm like, yeah, I just add it to the salad. What are you gonna do?
Well, and I have henbit, right, growing in my indoor hibiscus that I have on the windowsill all winter long.
Oh, see, so you get everything. You can make a flower essence out of that.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
So I guess for uh, viewers and for to go with the equinox and sending intentions through trees, um, what's your favorite way of sending in intention or sharing your intentions with the herbs or the trees, either one?
I typically sit with them. Whenever I make medicine, whenever I do anything, it's not, for me, it's not always a specific intention that I realize until later, but sometimes it is. It all depends. Um, but I usually sit with the tree, because or whatever herbs I'm doing with, I ask them permission to even harvest from them or utilize them in any way. And sometimes I get a no answer. People are like, well, do you really hear a no? And it's like, yeah, you just don't feel right in your body. It's like, yeah, this is not for today.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, whatever, like obviously not today. How about today? Yeah, like, yeah, okay, today you can, like, so it's really kind of an interesting thing. But
Yeah.
um for the equinox, I really think that the whole world really needs grounding. So if you could
Mhm.
definitely do something with the tree, and not only that, but the trees are so tall. They're the closest things to the heavens that's of the earth, and then their roots are structured and they're in the earth. And so to have that connection to the higher above, and so um
I'm going to have
just sit
you
with it.
I'm going to have you repeat that last sentence or two because at least on my side it froze,
Oh, okay.
and so I didn't hear it. Would you mind?
Oh, no, that's okay.
You were talking about the trees being throughout the ground
Yeah, but
and through the heavens.
to make that medicine, and I really think this is what people need right now, is because, in this crazy trying time, we don't know what the heck's going on. There's so many things in the air. Like, the one thing that we need to do is stand true in our authenticity. It's our authenticity.
And stay calm, right?
Right, exactly, and
Calm
be
around.
proud and, like, sturdy in who you really are as a person, and know that you're gonna be held, so I think that's what the trees represent. And
Well, they are that I am
right,
energy. They
right.
truly are. Yeah.
So to have that with you all year and to make it on that equinox where it's equal day, equal night. And even though they're not blooming now or they're not doing anything, I really feel like you can capture that energy. Um, you can just leave sometimes what I do is I just make water. So on the full moon and the new moons, I put my intentions on a piece of paper, or I write it directly on, like, I usually use ball jars. So I'll write my intention directly on the lid, and I'll leave my water out, like on the full moon or the new moon, I'll leave my water out all night for 24 hours with those intentions. So now I have the sun and the moon and, all that
Yeah.
energy. And then I sometimes I freeze it, sometimes I drink it all, so that way I can now embody my intentions, or you can, you know, you can make ice cubes out of it, little ice cubes, and then add that to your water every day, along with your crystals and whatever else you put in your water. But for the equinox itself, if you go to women's circles or anything like that, I typically bring that ball jar of water, and I have that. Capture that energy in there like that. Because it's a way to be able to make the intention real, to bring it into this physical world. So, and then if I want to release anything, like I typically do on the new moon, I write it down on a piece of paper and then I put it into the fire with intention. So that way it's like, you know, get rid of this negative energy, and it's like next thing you know, it's a windstorm and you're like, oh, I didn't realize I had so much negative energy. But
Uh,
those are the things that I typically do. Is it's usually with water. I don't know why, but you can do it with making your medicine on those particular
mm,
days, and capturing that sun and that you know moon energy in there. And even with the trees, like you can, like on the equinox, you can even put that water next to a tree, and then you and that tree can make that intention together. And
mhm.
it can hold it and give you that grounding and that connecting to the spirit and the earth at the same time, and give you that steady, constant. And if you want to preserve the water with I guess you can do it with all the water, but if you want to preserve the water, you can add, you do like half alcohol, half water, and then you can use it as like almost like a flower essence. So that way, if you want to use brandy, whatever, not rubbing alcohol. I mean, oh, you can even do it with vinegar too, like apple cider vinegar. I've done it with that too. So,
Mm,
if you don't drink alcohol.
yeah.
And then just take a drop every day. So that way you have that constant, steady, or whenever you're feeling uneasy, just kind of like be like, okay, I'm taking a minute for myself. I'm going to take this drop and, drop into my body and get, get grounded again. Because it's so easy to get ungrounded nowadays. Well, any day.
Oh, it is. Or what have found, even say if I'm in the house, or even if I didn't feel good and not felt good enough to go outside, I just hold the intention and picture myself placing my hands on the tree trunk and tapping into it and asking for healing,
Yep.
and healing comes.
Oh, it is.
It's
And
yeah.
it's about creating space. It's like when you take that time to create this space, you know, um, even space, like sometimes like something's bothering me and I can find myself getting short, and it's like, wait, okay, let's just create this space. And just by I do 3 breaths. And by the time those I give myself those 3 breaths, I'm like, wow, I'm a new person. Just
Mhm.
because, like I gave myself enough space. And it's like, then you can see, you can tap into you and be like, okay, what is it that I need to be able to get through this without being frazzled?
Yeah.
And I think that's what trees and nature and all that stuff really does, is it allows us to create the space.
Yeah, it kind of completes our circle,
Absolutely.
right? Of heaven and earth, right?
Mhm.
It's it's
And it
yeah.
helps us get out of the human doing and let it allows us, and well, the human doing, and just lets us be, like let us be the human being. There's a reason why we're a being and not a doing.
Yes. So, April, thank you so much for joining us. Can you please list any how people can get hold of you, or other offerings that you have going that you could do online if there was, or maybe
Yes,
there's
you can get me on Instagram and Facebook. That's Blooming Curiosity, and then on my website is blooming-curiosity.com. Yeah, and then we
all
can
right.
talk. Yep, because I do one-on-one. I can, we can talk. Yeah, if you want to get a hold
Awesome. And she's excellent to talk with.
of me.
And I was also going to say, do you have any final thought you want to leave people with,
I
or
think the biggest thing is get grounded. Get grounded as much and as often as you can.
all right. So we'll end there today. And thank you again, April, so much for joining us to kick off our month of the spring equinox and friend a tree week during equinox week. And I just wish you so much love and gratitude, and interest in your journey,
No, thank you. Thank
and
you.
your business.
Thank you so much.
So we'll talk to you next time. And thank you, everyone, for watching.
Thank you.
And hope this has been beneficial to your body, soul, and spirit. So we'll talk to you next time.